Welcome to Becoming the GC, the podcast that dives deep into the journeys of general counsels and chief legal officers, uncovering the insights and strategies that help define their success. Hosted by Joe Schul, founder of Inside Counsel Academy. We share real-life stories and practical advice from successful GCs, guiding you on your journey to the top. Tune in and discover what it takes to become the exceptional legal leader your organization needs.
Okay, this is Joe Schul. My guest today is Sterling Miller. You're going to love this one. Sterling is a true Renaissance man. We talk about his GC path, his books, his blog, the latest developments in AI for lawyers. This one has a lot. So stay with me to the end and I'll share my biggest takeaways. Here's Sterling's very brief bio. Sterling Miller is a 7-time author, 4-time general counsel, and writer of the 10 Things You Need to Know About or as an in-house counsel blog. He has been practicing law for over 30 years and has seen the evolution of the in-house lawyer role from a lonely backwater to strategic C-suite partner. Sterling is a sought-after speaker and GC whisperer. I highly encourage you to check out his blog if you haven't already seen it. It's at 10things.blog. All right, let's get right into the interview. All right, great. Hey, welcome, Sterling.
Hi, Joe. Glad to be here. Excited to talk GC.
Absolutely. It's great to see you. And I want to talk about your origin story and then work our way towards the many interesting things that you've been doing inside and outside the GC world. So if we can go back in time, I'm fascinated to see that you had a Poli Sci degree with a minor in mathematics. Tell me how those two go together, how they went together for you.
A painful memory you're dredging up. So it's interesting. I hope to your listeners. So I always wanted to be a lawyer since I was about 8 years old. And when I got through high school, the guidance counselor said, well, what do you want to do, right? You're going to go to college? Yes, I want to be a lawyer. Lawyers are a dime a dozen. You don't want to be a lawyer. You want to be an electrical engineer. And being an impressionable young man, first generation to go to college, certainly to go to anything beyond that, I said, okay, well, I'm going to be an electrical engineer. So what do you need to do that? Well, you got to take physics and math and chemistry and all these science classes.
Where was high school for you?
High school was in a small town in Nebraska, York, Nebraska, population about 6,000. So pretty small.
Eastern or Western Nebraska?
Oh, it's in the eastern part. It's near about an hour west of Lincoln, Nebraska, which most of your listeners are probably going, okay, which is about an hour west of Omaha. So hopefully they've heard of Omaha at least. But it was a great place to grow up. I loved growing up in Nebraska. It was really great.
The Great Plains.
Yeah, the Great Plains for sure. Very flat. So I said, okay, great. I'm going to be an electrical engineer because no better. So I get to college and the fortunate part of this story is I went to a small liberal arts school called Nebraska Wesleyan University in Lincoln, did not go to the big university. And of course, I started off in all the science classes, all the math classes, and I was okay at that, but I wasn't great. And the bane of my existence was math. And this was calculus, advanced calculus. And so I took a lot of math because I had to, but I was in the 3rd semester of calculus, which is something called differential equations. And that involves aquariums spinning and water coming in and out. And you have to calculate all these things. And I was like, this is really painful. But at the end of the first week of that semester, must have been sophomore year, the teacher got up with a piece of chalk on a chalkboard, because that's how old I am, and wrote 96 and 12. And she said, this is the range of scores on the first exam. And I was sitting there. I looked back at my buddy behind me and I said, man, if you got a 12, you should just pack your and leave because you're never going to make it. So she hands out the papers. I open it up. There's the 12. And I literally put everything in my little backpack and I walked out and I went down to the registrar's office and I said, I don't want to be an engineer. I want to be a lawyer. Can you help me do that? And they were so great.
Wow.
Absolutely. We changed all my classes over to, things like political science and history. And that's how I became a poli sci major. So what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to go to law school. And at that time, It's like, well, poli-sci is the major that you want to take, which I regretted when I actually got to law school and realized it didn't matter what your undergraduate degree was. There were people who were music majors and theater majors and everything else. Like, I could have done anything else. But I had so much math credit that I had a minor in math by default and a major in political science. But it just goes to show, follow your heart. What do you really want to do with your life? And don't let other people pigeonhole you or tell you what you should do. You should figure that out for yourself, and it'll be a better decision by far.
It sure does. Thanks for sharing that. I had no idea when I stumbled upon that interesting thing on your resume that it would lead to such a profound story. And
my daughters love that story because first it shows that their dad's a moron, and then secondly, it underscores what we were trying to teach them, which is make up your own mind, do something that you want to do, that you really love, and things will be far better for you. So,
yeah, well, I mean,
dual purpose.
Diffie is not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not.
I know that's not my roommate, from my own experience. So, all right, great. So you knew you wanted to be a lawyer at an early age. Actually, I don't want to leave that unasked. Like, what prompted that at 8 years old?
The Game of Life, the Milton Bradley Game of Life, which is still around, I think. I know I played it when our daughters were young. And one of the cool things about the game is you drive your little car around the board, is you can get different pieces of paper. Some are pieces of insurance. One piece of paper was stock. And I was fascinated by this piece of paper called stock. What is it? So I asked my dad, and I said, how do you get stock? And he said, well, I think you have to be a lawyer to work on stock. He didn't really know, of course, but that's what triggered, lawyer, stock. That's what I want to do. And I can remember pretty shortly after that, my younger brother and I created a lemonade stand. And we had a Big Chief tablet. So again, you have to be old enough to remember Big Chief was a writing tablet. And we drew in crayons stock in the Miller lemonade stand, and we sold them for $1 a piece to our friends in the neighborhood. So we had capital to start the lemonade stand, which of course it went bankrupt quickly because we drank literally all the inventory, and it was a hard lesson for lots of people. but I would pay that $1 back if someone had a copy of one of those stock certificates still.
Yeah, there's probably rescission or something available to, if anybody's listening.
I don't know what the statute of limitations is on that, but
but you heard it here.
It could be longer than I think.
Sterling's offering a rescission right. Lessons from the Game of Life. I love that game, and I'd always be when I'd be playing with my kids, I'm like, hey, the goal is to load up the car with a bunch of kids. Like, have some that don't even fit in the car. And they're like, no,
right. They're falling out.
It's about making the most money and having the profession that I'm like, no, that's not. But anyway, so everybody fine.
Pink and blue.
Okay, great. How did you find it to show up there?
I turned left. Turned left at Lincoln.
Exactly. Right. Did you enjoy it, or did you?
I loved law school.
Okay.
I had such a great time. For me, reading and writing are as natural as breathing air. And to go to a school where 90% of your day is reading or writing was heaven for me. I did not particularly like the Socratic method. I found that to be not conducive to how I like to think through things. I like to take my time. Being put on the spot, obviously you have to adapt to that and I have over time. But at the time, I really didn't appreciate that piece. But I really enjoyed the intellectual challenge. I liked being surrounded by really smart, motivated people. It was great. The professors were terrific. And so I really, really enjoyed the experience a lot. I don't know if I'd go back, but having done it once is certainly enough. And I did enjoy it.
Right. And that led to your first job was in litigation.
That's right. Well, actually, another lesson here. I wanted to be a corporate lawyer. So remember, I wanted to do stock. So when I went to law school, I ignored all the litigation classes and I took everything that had to do with corporate formation, contract drafting, any seminars I could take, anything that touched on corporate. That's what I wanted to do. I got a job at the time, one of the largest law firms in St. Louis, but it was only about 80 lawyers. So you could think about that now, and what that would make them a boutique shop. And I was in the corporate group and I really enjoyed it. I was doing all the things that I wanted to do. And we had this really small litigation group, maybe 12 lawyers. And they had a case that was fairly large for the firm. They needed bodies to do discovery. And this is when you went to the warehouse or wherever and you looked through paper. There was no relativity, there were no scans, there was nothing like that. You went box by box and you had post-it notes and you flagged the documents that you wanted. And they need people to go do that. I said, well, I'll go do it. And so I did that. And while that task wasn't particularly interesting, what was interesting to me were the discussions about the case and the strategy and how were we going to do X, Y, and Z and what did we need to do next. And before you know it, I went to the head of the firm and I said, I think I would like to be in the litigation group versus the corporate group. And again, once again, I've been so fortunate throughout my life and my career. It wasn't, no, it wasn't, what are you thinking about? It was, yes, we can figure out how to do that. Let's figure out what it's going to take. And so after a year or so of corporate, I moved over to litigation, which I took to like a fish out of water. I loved going to court, had no fear of standing up in before the judge or before a jury. I got first year jury trial experience, even though it was only 5 years out of law school. I really, really enjoyed it. So that's how I got to litigation.
Interesting. Okay. And then how does that lead you to your first in-house opportunity?
Of course, it goes completely the opposite direction later on. So, as an outside litigator, I worked a lot with in-house lawyers, and I was always fascinated by this process. Pick up the phone, call them. Here's what we think you should do. Here's why. What do you think? We'd have this conversation, and they would go, "Okay, let me go run that by some people, and I'll come back to you and tell you what we want to do." I was interested in what happened when that person, he or she, went and talked to whomever, and they came back with, "We agree, we disagree." That really fascinated me, along with how can you how much better could you get at your job if you just had one client?
Mm,
If you could
right.
really focus on all your energy on that business. I thought that would be really, really cool. And then the third thing was I got married. And my wife, met her in St. Louis, but she was from Dallas. And so after we got married, we said, let's move by one of the sets of grandparents, Dallas, York, Nebraska. Opportunity on the scales. It felt like Dallas was going to be the right choice. And it clearly was. And I ended up in-house at American Airlines, which is a terrific company in one of the most amazing collections of lawyers I think you could ever have assembled in one place, certainly for an in-house legal department. Incredibly talented people. I was in the litigation and regulatory section. And the regulatory stuff really became the hook because part of the business that we supported was this travel technology business that was regulated by the Department of Transportation. So all the contracts came to this group. Basically anything to do with this business came to the litigation and regulatory group, even though it wasn't litigation. So I got back into doing contracts
Mm.
again. And I thought, you know what? I really do like this again. So I focused more of my time. I'm still doing the litigation, but I really focused more of my time on the corporate side. And American spun that business out. I was there for a couple of years, and they asked, "Do you want to stay here at American, or do you want to go form?" The company was called Sabre. "Do you want to help form the Sabre legal department?" And I
Wow.
looked around. Well, there's a lot of talent here. It's going to take
Well,
me a
yeah. And
while.
how much? Like, how big was the
Yeah.
department at American Airlines?
65 lawyers, something like
Okay.
that. I mean,
And
it
who
was
was the
really
GC
big.
during that at that time?
It was Ann McNamara was the general
Okay.
counsel,
Okay.
and Bob Crandall was the CEO, who is a
Legendary. Absolutely.
legendary CEO.
Including
And
for me, absolutely.
I saw him in action many a time and
Right.
learned a lot,
Yeah, I bet.
mostly to keep my mouth shut, which was the best lesson you could learn around Bob, unless you had something that you knew you needed to say and it was
Right?
exactly right. Otherwise, you were taking your career in your hands if you were
Yeah.
going to just try to wing it. Bob or with Ann. Ann was great, a great teacher about being prepared. If you're going to go meet with the business, the importance of being prepared. So, as much as I loved all the people that I was with at American, the small group that we spun out, there were about 6 of us that spun out, and we formed the legal department at Sabre. So I got in on the ground floor. I was in charge of litigation, regulatory, but a lot of other stuff. And one of the things I learned that would be helpful in an in-house career is never say no. Never turn down a combat assignment was something I read in a book called The Right Stuff. And that was just meaning if someone asks you to do something, the answer should be yes, and figure out how to do it later. So we decided, so I had a small team, and I said, we're going to be the garbage men of the legal department. If someone doesn't want something or something doesn't have a home, we're going to take it. We're going to drive our truck around, put it in the back. So we had immigration, we had bankruptcy, we had sweepstakes, data privacy, anything that no one wanted, we took. So I had a really wide experience of different things, which not only was great from a learning standpoint and also keeping the job interesting, but I got to meet so many people in the company, people in the marketing department, people in, different groups because they needed immigration support or whatever the case was. And meeting those people and understanding their different parts of the business prepared me as much as anything for when the opportunity came to become general counsel, because I knew so much about the business, far more than anyone else in the legal department and far more than anyone they could bring in from the outside, all because I just said, yeah, we'll do it. We'll take it. We'll figure it out. And you can, unless it's ERISA or tax. I think lawyers are capable of learning any area of the law pretty quickly because you're just naturally adept at learning that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. So you moved over with a group of 6. Then what did that ascent to the GC role look like?
So the first opportunity, the general counsel that came with us. So the lawyer from American who became the general counsel, great guy. His name was Andy Steinberg. No longer with us, but man, wow, what a great lawyer and a great boss. He left around 2000, and they said, well, we're looking for a general counsel. If you're interested internally, let us know. We're also going to look externally. And I said, well, I was pretty young then. But I said, you know what? I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. So I went,
it's kind of refreshing.
I interviewed
to be invited to throw your hat in the ring, because so many companies.
It was amazing.
I work with folks who would like to become GCs, and they're at companies and the GC job opens and they sort of have to put their foot in the door and edge their way in, which is always like, well, if they wanted you, you're hiding in plain sight. And I'm always surprised more companies don't sort of invite that. Even if
it's interesting,
that person's not ultimately going to get the job at that point, just to have that conversation, expose them to the board. Anyway, it's an aside, but
that is such a great point. Yeah, because not only do you get the experience, but it's such a morale boost for the department as a whole that they're not. A lot of times they just say, I've been part of this and I've seen this. We're just going to look outside. Don't even bother. I mean, that is a crusher for the people who have been there for a long time and really know the business. Like, no one here is good enough to even interview.
Yeah.
It's a terrible message to send. So I did get the opportunity. I didn't get the job. The person who got the job was a lawyer at an outside law firm who was in-house at American and was the person who hired me on his litigation and regulatory team. He was the person that was in charge of litigation and regulatory for American. So one level below and McNamara, the general counsel. And we laughed about that because that was just, pretty funny that he was someone I was bossing around the week before because he was doing litigation for the company. And now he was brought in as my boss and said, well, all those crappy cases you gave me are now yours again. So that's like, okay, fine. But I learned a lot by going through the interview process. And what happened then was a couple years later, Sabre owned Travelocity.
Okay.
And Travelocity needed a general counsel. And that was my first opportunity to be general counsel. Would you like to go? They had one. He had left. They needed someone to take over, had a small team there. Of course, I said yes, would love to do it. On the condition that I would not have to report to the person that had hired me at American and was currently my boss. I wanted to report to the CEO. I said, look, I'm happy to report what's going on, but I don't want you to be my boss. I wanted to be autonomous. And they agreed to that.
Yeah.
And so I reported to the CEO. That was another incredible experience when she really brought me into the C-suite in a way that I wasn't expecting. I thought I would be kind of over here as the lawyer, but her vision, which is something that you was odd at the time or rare at the time, but I think you see now is really prevalent, was the legal skills are just the ticket to come here and work.
Yeah.
I want you to be a strategic advisor. I want you to be part of the executive team. I want to hear what you have to say, which of course forces you to up your game yet another level, because that's very different than just spotting legal issues and weighing in
Great.
on the legal issues. So that was great experience. But that was my first general counsel role, was at Travelocity. My claim to fame at Travelocity was when they were creating the Roman gnome commercials. So the little gnome dude,
Sure.
they previewed that for the executive team, and they went around the table. What do you think of this? They got to me and I said, this is the dumbest ad ever. People are going to hate it. It's never going to go anywhere. I would not do this. Of course, not only does it turn out to be one of the most popular commercials ever, it's in the Advertising Hall of Fame. It is why I'm not in marketing. I'm not a lawyer, but I appreciated being asked. Anyway,
Well, it's so true.
not a shining moment for me, I guess. I was like
Yeah.
12-1. Everyone else
I
loved it.
remember in business school, in marketing class, like being repeatedly told, you're not the client, right? Like you're not the target. So don't think
They're not the
like,
target.
think
That's
like
right.
the target, not like yourself, evaluating it through your eyes.
That's absolutely right.
I
Another
would
lesson
have
learned.
turned down the gnome as well. So
He was annoying, but I have some around the house here. I have to go I have to go look.
so funny. Okay, so coming into that job, what did you not know that you didn't know and that you had to learn to be successful? Like, how was it different from what you had done before?
Yeah. So very first C-suite meeting, all the executive team is there, and the very first thing they do is they throw up the P&L for the company. And then they do the balance sheet, and then they do the cash flow statement. And and they're talking all these the EBITDA and the
Yeah.
gross profit, net profit, COGS, all these different things. I had no idea what they were talking about. I mean, I had accounting back in college. I think I sat pretty much in the back and just, got through it, but I remembered nothing. And I went, "Oh my God, I'm going to have to learn math. I'm going to have to learn business math, not calculus,
Sure.
but I'm going to have to figure out." And there were a couple things I could have done. So I'm sitting there thinking, well, I can raise my hand and go, "What's EBITDA? What's this?" That just felt career limiting. My little spidey sense was tingling. And what I did is I had a notebook, which I still have somewhere in a box, and I started writing things Sterling doesn't know. Very long notebook.
Love it.
But
Oh,
I
man.
started writing down any term,
Yeah.
anything that I didn't understand, and then I would go find whoever presented on it, and I would say, "Would you please spend a few minutes with me and explain, why is this important? Why does this matter? How does this work?" I never had anyone say no. And I think being humble enough to admit you don't know everything, and you're going to go to whatever source you can to find the answer, if it's first year finance person or the CFO or whatever the case may be, A, is a great look for the legal department because they tend to have the opposite view of lawyers. And B, I
Totally.
learned a lot because I
Yeah.
was humble enough to say, "I don't understand this. Can you explain this to me?" I also did a lot on YouTube and a lot of reading, but I taught myself basically how to read financial statements and how to understand all that, which was really important because that's the language of the business. It's numbers. And if you don't speak that language, you're just a tourist, right? You're just kind of hanging out, and maybe you get a little bit of it, maybe you don't. If you really want to be on at the table, you really want to be impactful, not only do you have to have the legal skills, but you have to understand the business, and you have to be able to talk that number language. And if you
All of legal advising within a business organization is, risk, reward, cost, benefit. And if you can't
Absolutely, yes,
evaluate that from a financial perspective, which is how score is kept, then that's not very helpful.
you're right. That's
That's great.
absolutely
And
right.
that, yeah, I love that, because then, of course, when you're talking about legal things, which it's hard to believe, but not everybody like has the same background in their hearing. And of course you're saying it in a clear way, but they may not have the background to understand it. Now you've opened the door to them coming to you outside the meeting and, asking questions and not feeling like they're going to look dumb.
Yes, yeah, it is. It is an invitation. If I'm going to ask you, you are more than welcome to ask me, and I'm happy to teach you and explain things. But that's another lesson I think in-house lawyers need to learn generally, especially when you're presenting to the business or talking to the business, is they don't necessarily love legal issues, and they spend as little time, most of them spend as little time as they can dealing with them. You can't walk in and assume they understand anything at the level close to what you do. Even if you walk in and go, well, the plaintiff and the defendant, they may not raise their hand, but they probably don't know what you're
You may
talking
have
about.
already
Who's the
lost.
plaintiff? Who's the defendant? What does that mean? Well, we're in discovery. What's discovery? So you have to recalibrate to not be condescending or talking down to them, but to understand one of the very first things you need to do is make sure you are presenting the information in a way that they can understand so they can do what they need to do, which is make a decision, give you authority, whatever it is that you're trying to get out of that interaction with the business, presenting it in a way that they can understand it, and they'll also appreciate it because they've dealt with lawyers who have talked to them as though they're fellow lawyers, and they really don't like it, but they rarely speak up and say anything about it. But when you talk to them in their language, they will tell you, that was a really excellent, clear explanation of the problem. Thank you. What they're really saying is you didn't talk like a lawyer.
Yeah.
And if you're writing things for the business, if you're using footnotes, secondary sources, talking about dicta, I mean, you've missed the boat so far. You are drowning in the sea by that point. If you have a blue book, chuck it in the trash. You're never going to use it. You need to understand those things and learn those things. And I learned it the hard way, meaning I screwed it up and then I figured out, why am I doing it this way? This is what they want. This is what they need. And adapting to them versus trying to force the business to adapt to the lawyers, which is kind of how outside lawyers are.
Well, I was just going to go there,
Right?
which is like, hey,
You
these
gotta,
are
you gotta,
essential lessons
yeah.
for in-house lawyers, right? Like if you're going to be successful in-house, you've either you figured this out or you're going to need to figure it out. But outside lawyers who are listening, and I know outside lawyers listen to this, like this is 100% equally true, right? And when
Absolutely.
you've been in-house and then you go back like you are advising companies from the outside, having had that perspective is so helpful because unless as an outside lawyer, you've made a conscious decision to sort of do what maybe all the people around you aren't doing, you're going to be a bit behind on that. So there's a huge opportunity for outside lawyers to have a competitive advantage by either having served in an in-house role or at least adopting the mindset of an in-house lawyer.
Yeah, and you're seeing more in-house lawyers go back to law firms. I wouldn't say it's a tidal wave or tsunami,
Yeah.
but more law firms are figuring out if I have someone on the team who's been in-house, they can help me relate better to the client, communicate in a way that maybe we haven't been communicating with the client. Sure, I can take whatever, as an in-house lawyer, or whatever super complex stuff you give me, I can convert that into something the business can understand. But you know what I really appreciate? If you've already done that
Yeah.
and said, Sterling, this is some really complex stuff. I've written this in a way that we can share it with the business without you having to do a lot. I love that. And one of the blogs, I write this blog, and one of the blogs I wrote a long time ago is what in-house lawyers really want from outside lawyers, and it kind of listed those things. Like if when it was me, yes, I appreciate you're super smart. You went to Harvard, you're at Mega Law. I get all that, but man, give me something that I don't have to spend an hour fixing that I can use with the business. That is someone that I will keep going back to.
Brilliant. Okay. So how does Travelocity end for you?
Horribly. No.
You're not still there. So
Yeah. So, well, one of the interesting things, quick aside, because I talked about all the talent at the American Airlines legal department, and particularly in the litigation regulatory section. And at one time, so the four biggest online travel agents, this would have been mid 2000s, 2007, 6, something like that. Travelocity, Expedia, Orbitz, and Priceline. the general counsel for Travelocity was me. For Expedia was someone I was in the legal department with me at American, and same with Orbitz. We were all in the litigation group together. So
Wow.
we were laughing at the fact that it was like a staff meeting when we got together to talk. We were doing some lobbying in Washington, and we all got together. So just an amazing amount of talent, an amazing coincidence. So what happened with Travelocity, it was partially public, partially private, and Sabre was getting bought by private equity. This was around 2008. And the private equity guys, if Sabre owns Travelocity, why do they have two legal departments? Which of course made a ton of sense, right? That's exactly the right thing to look at. And the general counsel at Sabre was going to retire once the transaction was completed. So they said, Sterling, would you like to be the general counsel for Sabre? Because now I had been all over I mean, I had so much knowledge about the company. I'd met so many people, the board, all those opportunities that you get as a general counsel were really paying off. Said yes, on one condition: we bring all Travelocity back under one legal department, and I get to manage it. And at that point, now it was global. So I had lawyers in the U.S. and Singapore, Mexico, France, London, several cities in the U.S. There's one other place I'm leading out, but it was so it was another uber talented group of people that I got to be responsible for. And so I went back. We went private, which was actually kind of a relief after being public, because being publicly traded, as you probably know, or your listeners know, there's a lot of stuff you just have to do, from 8K announcing things,
Absolutely.
paying attention,
Always earnings.
all the whole
right?
the whole cycle of earnings releases and quarterlies, proxies. It's just wow, it's a lot, and you don't really get to do a lot of lawyer stuff per se. So anyway, so that was a nice respite for a while. So I went back, and I'm in charge of the Sabre legal department. My first board meeting, fall of 2008. And what had happened in the fall of 2008, that was the housing banking crisis, where the markets just collapsed. And so my very first board meeting, we were talking about how many people we were going to have to let go, how we were going to cut costs, which is not a pleasant thing to go through. And I've experienced that many times in my career now, the highs and the lows. I mean, I was in travel when 9/11 happened, and that was a pretty shock to the system moment. And you kind of wonder how the company's going to survive. It's amazing, the resilience of some of these entities, these companies, but you got through it. But my first meeting was not a lot of fun. It wasn't high five, hey, welcome Sterling. It was, okay, here's what we're going to do to get our costs in line with the new reality of the economy. So a real eye opener.
For sure. So you wind up in that job for many years.
Yeah, about 6 or 7 more years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what are the highlights and
Well, I can tell you the lowlights.
okay, let's hear the lowlights.
No, it was it was a great experience. One of the things though we came out of the 2008 recession. I mean, over time things got back to normal. Travel business was rolling again, 2010. Then we got into these huge antitrust fights with American Airlines, our former owner. A lot of my friends, very unfun experience. We had cases in federal court, state court. We had a DOJ investigation. I had another airline that sued us for antitrust. And I have to tell you, I tried to avoid a couple things in law school. One was tax law, and the other was antitrust law. And I had to learn both as part of being general counsel. And antitrust law was the least favorite, because not only is it kind of a complex and weird subject, it's very counterintuitive in a lot of ways.
Oh, that's what I always say.
But the risk is unbelievable, because it's treble damages. So they can prove $1 billion, it's $3 billion. Basically,
treble
could destroy
damages
the company.
in the threat of prison.
That's right, for criminal,
right?
for criminal violence.
It doesn't get any more serious than that.
So we had a couple of years of unbelievably hard litigation. I mean, weekends, holidays, it didn't really matter. We were just working, because everything was on the line, and you feel the pressure of 12,000 employees around the world. If we don't win this case or resolve it in a way that works, I mean, you literally could see the company declaring
Literally
bankruptcy.
set the company.
This wipes everything out for everyone, including myself. But that didn't happen. So we got through that. That was actually, today's the anniversary, October 30th of 2011 or 2012. It was 2012. So 13 years ago, we settled on this day. So, wow, there you go. Coincidence.
And it's imprinted in you.
That's amazing. And then we went from that into, we think we're going to take the company public. And so we had to reorganize. We sold off some bits and pieces. That was a lot more interesting and more fun, but it was a lot of work. So we're getting the company ready to go public. And then we took it public in 2014.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough to go. I've been there 20 years. I'm going to take my IPO and go. And I went.
Yeah.
I retired.
A bunch of interesting stuff for you, right? You write
That's
a
right.
book. Is this when you launched the blog, or had you already done that? Tell us about your blog.
I had not. So very last day at Sabre, 2014, I had committed to doing a CLE in downtown Dallas, part of a whole day thing. So I said, yeah, I'll still do that, even though I wasn't going to be the general counsel the next day. So afterwards, we're at the cocktail hour, which all good CLEs have a cocktail hour. That's the best part. And these young in-house lawyers were coming up to me and asking me, well, if I wanted to be general counsel, what would you do with this? Or how would you treat this? Or they were just asking me questions, which was fine, but they were writing it down on napkins and little scraps of paper. And I thought, well, if anyone's going to write down what I experienced as an in-house lawyer, it should be me. And I had no idea how to write a blog and never thought about it in the past. So I did some research. And the very first one was November of 2014. So coming up on the anniversary of that. And I called it 10 Things You Need to Know as In-House Counsel, because whenever we had an issue that was kind of new or we didn't really understand it, I would grab whoever, business people, legal people, whoever I thought I needed, get in this room, and we're going to whiteboard 10 things we need to know about this. Go. It was a brainstorming tool, and we would just start writing down, we need to know this. We've got to figure out this. So I just lifted that concept, and I said, well, if I had a legal issue, what are the 10 things that I need to know about it in order to at least get my arms around it and start to be able to be effective? And that's it. So I just pick a topic and I write, here are 10 things you need to know. It was that simple. And I thought I might do it. I might do it for a year, right? My mom might read it. I never imagined I'd still be doing it. There's close to 20,000 subscribers now.
Wow. That's incredible. It
amazes me.
If anybody's listening who hasn't checked it out, you've got to check it out. It's such a great framework. Everybody loves a list of, 10 things. So
and it's very practical because I'm writing it from being in the chair of the in-house lawyer, which is something that I think law firms miss when they write their client alerts. Either they're written in a way that's not very useful, or they don't give you the useful piece. And I understand why they do that. They call us. You will get more calls if you're at an outside counsel. You will get more calls if you actually give them something useful that they can look at and go, this was really helpful. I'm going to call that person next time I have a problem, than leading them all the way up to, and if you need this, call me. They're not going to do that. Some will, but most people aren't. So I'm just throwing that out. That's free advice.
Totally, right?
For your outside lawyers, give them something useful. I love checklists, sample clauses, all that stuff is incredibly valuable to an in-house lawyer. They're not going to use that as a substitute for outside counsel. I can tell you that. But if they find it useful and they appreciate the fact that you gave it to them, they will come back to you. That I do know firsthand is certainly how it works. So I started doing that. And then I was reading this book on the 1925 Pottsville Maroons, which were an NFL franchise in 1925. And the book was about the controversy over the NFL title in 1925, where it was based on percentages, and the teams could play whoever they wanted, high school teams, college teams, guys from the brewery. Didn't really matter, but all those games counted. So they were all rigging the standings. It was really fascinating. But what really fascinated me was what happened to all these teams? So the Dayton Triangles, the Oolong Indians, the Portsmouth Spartans, the Dayton Triangles, all these, where did they go? And I couldn't find a book that just walked you through the evolution of the NFL. And I thought, well, I'm sitting around, I'm not doing anything. I'll just write one. I didn't know how to write a book. And I just started going year by year.
How did you
The
research?
NFL, I loved the research, live and breathe football, which I love. It was, to me, it was a real joy. Found a publisher. And that was the first book. And then the blog had become so popular, the ABA reached out and said, would you like to do a book based on the blog? So that was the first book I did for the ABA. I've done 4 for them now, including the last one, which is on productivity. Which the irony of writing a book on productivity is finding the time to do it. But I used a lot of the things that I write about in the book, and I write about it as an in-house lawyer. So these are ways that you can get more out of your day without working longer. Again, I screwed it up at first, but I figured out over time, these are things that you can do that add up. And some add up really big, some are only small, but if you add all those small things together, you can get a big chunk of time back. That's what I wrote about that one. The most popular book is the cookbook. I wrote a cookbook on using a slow cooker or crock pot, maybe
right.
what people hear about. Far and away the most popular. So book number 7 comes out next month, is the second edition. Actually, it's not a new edition. It's a whole new cookbook
Okay.
on slow cooker recipes. That'll be out in November. And then
Okay.
I
And how's
think I'll go back to writing another one for the ABA after that.
Okay.
But
All right, good. The new slow cooker book, how's it different from the first one? It just additional recipes or?
additional recipes, and the first one focused on a lot of really traditional things that you can make, like a pot roast, beef stew, right? Things really familiar. So I thought what I would do is maybe make it a little more exotic, a little more. One of the things I've realized about cuisine in the United States over the last 5 or 10 years is people like things spicier than they ever did, and I think that's a lot of the influence of people either traveling or coming to the U.S., bringing their sampling cooking or bringing their cooking. So I have a lot of recipes from Brazil, from Portugal, from all around the world that I have found that you can make in a slow cooker and just taste awesome, and they're so easy. That is the thing I love about it. It takes a little bit of prep time, but once you put it in and you turn it on, 8 hours later you come back and it's just awesome.
Right on.
So it's a little more exotic, we'll put it that way.
When do you write?
I will schedule time to write on my calendar. I'm a big believer in scheduling, not just meetings with other people, but scheduling tasks or times on your actual calendar so it's blocked out. I'm also a really early riser, so I can write in the morning, I can write late, I can write on airplanes, I can write waiting in the lounge for the airplane, I can write wherever it is. I find even if I only write for 15 minutes, that's 15 minutes of the book done. And
what are your tools for writing?
I'm sorry?
What are your tools for writing? Are you typing?
Oh, I use Word primarily. I loved WordPerfect. I wish it was still around, but I gotta
So you got
get
your
over that.
laptop and
I use a laptop. I'll also write on my phone occasionally if I'm just if I have an idea, I'll just about something or write as much as I can while I'm just waiting for something, and I'll just email it to myself, and I can cut and paste it into the master document. But primarily, it's a laptop. And just finding time to sit. The only tool I use in addition to just writing is Grammarly. I find that to be really helpful in reviewing what I've written and spotting things. If you write a lot, and I know lawyers definitely know this, you see words that aren't there because you're reading a line and you either have to step away or sometimes you just need a tool. And I find Grammarly to be the best. It just goes and says, oh, you're missing a word here. Like, how did I miss that? So, but other than that, it's just doing some research and just sitting down and doing the hard task for most, but not necessarily for me because I love to write. It's just to sit down and do it and just get going. And I told this to our daughters and I talk about this in the productivity book. And I learned this from one of the mentors when I was at that first law firm in St. Louis. He said, look, don't try to come up with the perfect paragraph, the perfect topic sentence, just barf it up. Get it out, write it down, because you're going to go, if you're doing anything right, you're going to go back and edit it, right? But if you just sit there and try to come up with the perfect sentence, it just takes forever. Whereas like, yeah, I know I want to write about this, or sometimes I'll write about all the things I want to put into this paper or section or blog. What's the easiest thing? I'll start there. Right. If
Mhm.
I have 10 things, what's the easiest one? I'll do that one. And that gets you started. And all those little things just add up. So when I write the blog, I usually write it over the course of several days. I do, one or two topics today, two or three tomorrow, mush them all together, edit it, all that stuff. But
How
it's rare
often?
that I would just sit down and write the entire blog.
Yeah.
That would take a lot of time.
How often are
Um,
you posting on the blog?
about once a month. It was every 2 weeks for the first few years, and then I went back. I unretired and went to the law firm, and then I went back in house. And then when we sold that company, I went back to the law firm. That was really the big decision point, right? Stay in house or go back to the law firm. I went back to the firm, and now I'm the CEO. So your time gets harder, shorter and shorter and shorter. So I thought, okay, once a month is good. That works pretty well.
Yeah. Okay.
First, I thought
Great.
people were going to write me, going, "How come you're not writing twice a month?" They're going to chastise me, and I was feeling preemptively guilty for not, for not publishing twice a month. Every once in a while, I'll throw in one
Yeah.
because I just have an idea and I'll just do it, and it'll be. But for the last couple of years, it's been about once a month. Though I'm up to, I think I'll be 190. I think it's blog 190. This
Wow,
next one.
that's great. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you're literally the productivity expert. You've written the book on it for in-house lawyers. I want to talk about AI in the
Okay.
last couple of minutes we have here. But if anybody hasn't listened to Stacey Bratcher's interview of Stewart, pause this, go listen to it, because I'm going to sort of, what I want to do is say that I listened to that, and this must have come out in late August, so it's only been 2 months.
Yeah.
I followed up on some of the ideas that you set forth in there, some of the products that you mentioned, did a bunch of demos, have integrated into not only my daily practice, but that of my firm. Sort of I'm leading this charge within the firm and on behalf of our clients. And it's hard to remember what it was like 2 or 3 months ago. It's that sort of revolutionary, I think. And it's not, I mean, I sort of think of it as like it's a 30-40-30 thing where it's like the human is 30% upfront. You turn it over to the machine for 40%, and then you got to finish it off, right? Because it's great and way better than me at a lot of things. But GC AI, as great as it is, hasn't
Yeah.
actually been a GC. So, you've got to still have that human element, but together you can create and do things that, neither the machine nor the human could do without. And so my
Absolutely.
question to you is, because things are moving so fast, is there anything you would sort of update from your talk with Stacey a couple months ago on things that you've learned or come across?
Yeah. So I would say the main theme of what I talked about with Stacy, and I write about this in the productivity book, because that's when I realized how powerful generative AI is as an assistant or tool for lawyers, especially in-house lawyers, because we're completely aligned with the time saving versus maybe the outside lawyers, or how they're going to get the money for their work when they're using AI. Different thinking. Nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But it's the prompt, right? It's the question that you asked and the follow up that you do. That's number one,
30
and
and
that's
the 30 on either side of the 40,
exactly what you were
right? Yeah.
describing.
Yeah.
Prepping the question, getting the answer, and then taking that and honing it. What's really exciting now is the agentic AI, and those are tools that will complete tasks for you, kind of like If Then This That, which was an app that came out a couple years ago. If this thing happens, it's going to trigger another app. It's going to do something. Now, artificial intelligence, look at my calendar. If you see meetings for this, do the following, or create an agenda, book dinner, whatever. But it's acting as an agent for you and doing things
Proactively. Yeah.
proactively. Right. That is really exciting.
What was the word for that before AI?
Agentic. Agentic.
Okay. Like
Agent. They
agency.
just
Yeah.
call it
Okay.
like
Right.
agency,
So now the,
agentic.
the computer is having agency and being,
Yeah. So I told my daughters, both of them, and they're both gainfully employed now. One's a paralegal, one's a lawyer. Be the person who understands how to use these AI tools. And I say that to any young lawyer, anyone from law school listening to this, in-house law firm, it doesn't matter, because there are going to be plenty of old lawyers who all they're going to want to do is find the person who knows how to do this. Get me that person who knows how to write the prompt. Get me that person who can help me set up this agentic AI stuff. That will make you incredibly valuable to whatever organization you are. And even if it's an in-house legal department, if you're the person who can help understand how prompts work, how to improve them, how to use AI, you are now what I was 20 years ago. I was the person raising my hand. I'll do the budget. I'll help do the board slides. I'll do all those tasks because those were needed. This is what's needed now. Someone who understands that. So I think that is the biggest change I've seen just in a few months is how that's going to permeate everything that we do. And how can you use that to make the legal department or the law firm more productive and yourself, more effective? That's the next big one.
Yeah. 100% agree with all of that. And I think the one other thing that I know is implicit in there, but I'm gonna state it out loud for people, especially younger lawyers, is also to know its limitations, like the ability to know how to use it and what its limitations are. Because I think there's a risk, like you or I, with all the experiences we have, can tell when it's not quite right or it's missing something. And just, I think by nature of our personalities, we're always going to know that we don't know everything. AI, sort of used the wrong way, can make you think you know everything, or it knows everything and therefore you know everything when it doesn't. And I think that can get people in trouble.
That's an excellent point, Joe, is not learning how to use it. That is a great corollary. Also understanding what its limits are. And it's not a substitute for you understanding the law. So if you're using it and it's to write a brief, you need to read every case. You need to shepherdize every case. If you're not doing that and you're turning that over to a partner, or worse, to a client, or even worse, to a court, you are committing malpractice. You cannot. It's just a tool. You cannot do that. It'd be the same if you have a really smart intern or summer associate. You would never go, "Oh, summer associate wrote this, I'm just going to file it with the court as is." You would never do that. Same thing. And you can't use it as a substitute for learning what's going on. So if I was using it maybe to draft a contract, I would still, as a young lawyer learning contracts, what are indemnity provisions and how do they work? What are limitation of liability provisions and how do they work? When do I use examples? All those are things that you should be learning and asking questions about. Can you use AI to help maybe do a draft or maybe do things faster? Yes. But if you're just going to sit back and push a button and expect it to do your job for you, they don't need you because you're adding zero value. And B, it's probably not going to be correct. It's problematic.
Super. Thanks for diving into that. Again, I'm going to ask you one more question. We'll leave it there. What are you personally most looking forward to?
I I would say retirement, but I've retired twice, so I don't think that's it. I am looking most forward to. I think it has to be the AI. I am fascinated with how it works and the amazingly different types of outputs you can get from charts and graphs, memos to emails to translations. Where are we going to be in 10 years? I don't think we're going to replace lawyers. I still don't believe that. You're not going to have a laptop in the boardroom and they're all going to get a circle around it and ask it questions. They want that person there. I think the lawyers who know how to use AI will always have a place. The lawyers who don't, you're the ones who are in trouble, or if you're just doing something so rote that it could be written out. But where is that going to be in 10 years from now? Because that's probably when I'm done. And I'm not really going to worry about it as much, but I will just be interested in how that plays out. Because I think that is the single most impactful change we're going to see in the practice of law in, I don't know, probably the next 30 years. It was the computer 20 years ago, and now it's AI. We'll see where it is in 10 years. And then beyond that, who knows what's coming. So I'm going to stick with AI.
Right on. We'll leave it there and we'll look forward to seeing what's next for all of us. So thank you, Sterling. It's been a real pleasure, as always.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. Thank you for listening. This episode was chock full of lessons for inside and outside counsel. I'm just going to hit 3 main takeaways that I took from the interview with Sterling. Number 1, never say no. Sterling became GC for the first time, being willing to do the work that others wanted to avoid. That helped leverage him into his first GC role. And then that role is leverage for everything that followed in his career. Number 2, keep a notebook for learning. He calls his Things Sterling Doesn't Know, which is a great title. I call mine the Learning Notebook. When you stop learning, you stop growing. And when you stop growing, your career begins to die. The discipline of keeping a notebook is something that many could benefit from, and few people actually do. If something is new or interesting to you, you record it in the notebook, and you've got a placeholder that you can then go back and review so that it begins to stick. Spaced repetition is what leads to learning. Having the notebook is the antidote to things coming in and out of your brain without being retained. Okay. Number 3, stay on the cutting edge of your field. In this case, the most important thing happening in in-house lawyering is AI. Sterling has already established himself as a leader in this field, and he's leading by example. It's been a great example for me and my adoption of AI tools, and that for myself and on behalf of my firm. Okay, until next time, this is Joe Scholl. I'd love to connect with any in-house lawyers or outside lawyers serving in-house lawyers who are interested in maximizing their potential or learning new things. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn and let's start a conversation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Becoming the GC. Whether you're preparing for the GC role or looking to sharpen your skills as a sitting general counsel, we hope this episode offered valuable insights and inspiration. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your colleagues and friends. Explore more resources and join our community at InsideCounselAcademy.com. Please tune in next time for more insights and inspiring stories from successful legal leaders.